Who are these people?
We're going to bring everybody in. Hi, everybody.
Are we good?
We're good. We're here.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Antiwar and INN. We are here. It's been a while since we've done one of these. So, I mean, there's not a lot to talk about. Not much going on in the Middle East, but I'm sure we can find some things to discuss. But we're here with Indy, obviously, from INN. Everybody's familiar with him. And the incredible Scott Horton, who, if you know me, you know I'm a huge fan of. I think he's probably one of the most important anti-war voices out there today. And we are going to pick his brain. He's been in the depths of finishing his latest book, which is called Provoked: How America Started the New Cold War with Russia and the Catastrophe in Ukraine. That is going to be an incredible read. I know it's very long. Shout out to Will Porter, who's working very hard trying to edit that and get it down to a more condensed version. I'm very, very, very excited to read that. So everybody keep an eye out for that. And also just a heads up, Scott does fantastic work over at the Libertarian Institute. They are currently in the middle of one of their fundraisers. So if you would like to head over to libertarianinstitute.org, I'm sure Indy could throw that in the chat for everybody. You can go head over there and support them. Check out the work. They do a lot of fantastic stuff, including publishing books, much like Scott's that he has coming out soon. So head over there, check their work out, and then if you feel so inclined, make a contribution and share the link as well. Obviously, the more people that get eyes on it, the better. And they're already halfway to their current goal. So make a contribution if you do so feel inclined. Okay, so we're going to dive into the latest with Israel Palestine. Obviously, there's a metric shit ton of stuff going on. So we're going to try to piece out as much as we can. Obviously, I'm very excited to get Scott's take on this stuff. He has been very busy, so he's been a little silent on some of this, but there is a lot going on. So Scott, just what is your general take? I know that's kind of a very crazy, broad, open-ended question, but it seems as if, I mean, we've got the situation now where it is, we're incredibly close to a whole lot of really terrible things happening. Iran's obviously nipping at the bud to get their payback. So where do you see this heading right now?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'd rather eat my words later and be wrong. But I'm not feeling the alarmism. Quite frankly, the Ayatollah doesn't want to fight. He's made that very clear, you know, over a very long period of time here. You know, put yourself in his position. You're the supreme leader of Persia. You know, what are you going to do with the problem like America? And we're not going away. And he's been the dictator over there essentially since 1989. And he's, you know, a very extreme leader if you live there, but he's been a real pragmatist in foreign policy. Virtually all of his major advances in foreign policy in our era have been own goals, as the soccer players call them, by the United States government, enhancing their power without much effort on their part. So I'm not looking at Iran as a real aggressive power right now, or, you know, trying to get away with murder. They throw, speaking of murder, they have these rumors that a Pakistani tied to Iran had tried to hire a hitman through an informant to kill Trump. And apparently Trump believes it. But that's completely crazy. But it, you know, people are so used to hearing propaganda about Iran and believing it. You'll even hear people say, "Oh, did you hear that this guy was going to kill Trump? You know, did you hear?" And that's good enough. Like, yeah, I heard that, but you're not supposed to believe it. They lie about Iran all the time. They lie about everything. But it helps build up a caricature in the minds of the American people. But at the same time that the Ayatollah doesn't want to fight, I don't think that the Pentagon wants to fight either. Because even though if it came to a real war with Iran, it would, America, you know, has the ability to carpet bomb their country off the face of the earth, even without nukes. And they know that. But at the same time, it would hurt like hell trying, because they would also be able to hit American targets all throughout the Gulf, in Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, especially. You know, our Fifth Fleet is stationed at Bahrain, and there's the Central Command is headquartered at Qatar with the giant Al Udeid Air Base, it's called there. And all of that is up for grabs because they have a huge quantity of missiles that the Americans couldn't possibly shoot down. So all those targets would be up for grabs, and we would lose, potentially thousands of lives and $1 gazillion worth of equipment over it. And for what? So is it possible that the Ayatollah, that the Ayatollah of Israel, the supreme leader of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, could drag us in, by some chess move? Possibly, but I don't think likely. And I think, Hezbollah has been essentially satisfied to do tit for tat attacks back and forth. Some rock there. Ansar Allah, aka the Houthis down in Yemen, they're getting some pot shots off. But anyway, I don't know. Biden, as much as he's even lucid at all, he doesn't want to escalate the war to like a real ass war to try to destroy Hezbollah in Lebanon. Call it the B-52s, send in the Marines. He doesn't want that. And
not as he's going into an election, for sure.
Yeah, or at all. And the Pentagon doesn't want that. Yeah, no, they had their full of Iraq War II and Iraq War III. They're not trying to go for, to just make this worse and worse and worse over there. So the Israelis, they suck, and they're certainly putting us at risk of war getting out of control. But I think a lot of the narrative about, the threat of the war getting worse is built on presumptions of Iran and possibly Russia and China to work together to really nail us. But I don't think they're trying to do that. I think they're all mostly trying to get by rather than really figure out a way to stick one to us by, for example, Putin scheming to lure us back into Iraq or whatever. None of that is on the table, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think they have to. Really, they can just sit back and let us destroy ourselves. That's what we're doing.
How do we get Gaza to end is my big question. Is it, who's gonna get them to stop? Because it's not going to be us. Obviously, it's not going to be any Western power. Is not going to convince them to stop until they've basically wiped everyone out and taken the land. And please tell me I'm wrong, because how else does this play out? And
I guess now I contradict myself completely from what I was just saying, because I think that you're right. And ultimately, I don't know about Harris. I really don't know. When she actually is in the chair, she would be a puppet and a figurehead and this and that. But when you're actually the one in the chair, you do get to call the shots, even if it pisses everybody off, to some degree anyway. So what she would actually do, I really don't know. I fear the very worst from Donald Trump. They say, he has some grudge against Netanyahu for endorsing or, congratulating Biden for his election victory or whatever. I don't think that amounts to much. They've already made up over that. And as far as I can really tell, I don't know about all major companies in New York City, God knows what, but it sure seems like the only real power faction that supports Donald Trump is the Israel lobby, and only part of them. Much of the Israel lobby is against him as well. You got Bill Kristol leading the Never Trumpers, but his brother-in-law, Elliot Abrams, worked for Trump and is going to again. So I don't know. But I think he just has to kowtow to them because, when it comes overall to the big arms industries or to Wall Street, agribusiness, pharma, these are not all in Trump's corner. This is all the permanent establishment that supports the Democrats now in the face of his rogueness to whatever it is. So I don't know any other real power faction that's lined up behind him to support him, other than at least some of the Israel lobby, and the worst of them, like Miriam Adelson, who represents, a very right-wing Israeli nationalism. And so then that means, to follow the train of thought, if Trump says, look, go ahead and move them out, and there's no one to stop them, the EU ain't going to do anything, and there's nobody going to do anything. It's not like Russia's going to intervene in the Middle East to prevent that from happening. But if that does happen, that could set off the entire region. I think Erdogan talks a lot. I don't know how much he really means it, but he's made some real threats, at least against Israel. He may intervene at that point. That's a NATO ally, Turkey.
He said something to the ICJ.
Not a treaty ally. I'm sorry.
Erdogan just yesterday or today said something to the ICJ about Israel again, and he's been pretty bombastic, like you said. Yeah.
And you could have a coup in Egypt or in
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, and so those could stop being friends with Israel overnight. And we're talking in the face of a massive cleansing campaign from East Jerusalem and Hebron and Ramallah and Bethlehem and the rest, out of the West Bank. That could lead to all kinds of shifting alliances and a real regional war. Even Sunni kings toppled and joining the fight with the Shiites. Because see, really pisses me off. You hear pro-Israeli people argue about the Palestinians that, well, nobody else wants them either.
Ugh.
And it's funny because on one hand, they're taking the words literally right out of the mouth of Adolf Hitler after
Yes,
the
they are.
conference, talking about, well, you don't want the Jews because they're all a bunch of terrorists and criminals, and that's why it's fine. And I don't want to hear another word about why it's not okay for me to do what I do with them either, he said. And so on one hand, they're literally invoking the words of the Fuhrer in order to justify their position there. But secondly, their implication is that, again, to paraphrase him, that the Palestinians are all just terrorists and criminals. But that's not the point. The point is that if even the worst of these Sunni kings sit there and do nothing while every last Muslim is cleansed from the Holy Land, from historic Palestine, then that means that they completely lose control of all of the holy sites. That means they're going to blow up the Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild the temple and all this crazy stuff. So
they don't want to lose Jerusalem. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what it's about. It's not like, because they were all just ridden with tuberculosis, or they're all just rapists ready to come across the border or whatever, like in the right-wing narratives. That's not what it is, And just especially back to the first part, to hear Zionist Jews invoking Hitler's exact statements about them in order to, and ignorantly, right?
It's
like they don't
mind blowing.
Yeah, they don't know that this is a Hitler quote from the Evian after the Evian conference, but it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it was their land. It was still their land. I mean, that I'm an anti-Zionist Jew. So like this is. I had to deprogram. I was raised Zionist. I didn't even know, they didn't teach us the Nakba. They didn't teach us anything about how we got it. It was gifted to us. Forget about who was there or how they did anything, right?
Yep.
And it's remarkable. But
Americans too. That's how it's taught to Americans too. I'm not quite 50, and basically they never really explain it, but the idea is that if anybody had to be moved out of the way, it was like these brown-skinned barbarian types anyway. So who cares? You know what I mean? As they call them in Texas, they're towel heads or camel jockeys or sand N-words or whatever. That was the way they called them. When I was a kid, they really don't count compared to people who are white-skinned Europeans. And so just who cares? And for the most part too, and things have changed now with the internet, I guess. When I was growing up, nobody ever said anything about Israel at all. It's like, they're bombing Beirut or whatever on the nightly news. But there was never really any explanation or discussion of Israel or their role in America or what was going on over there. Israel's just a word in a Christmas song. We didn't never hear anything really about what was going on over there because it didn't really matter. The idea was that this occupation is going on and all that, but the people being occupied are essentially animals anyway. So who cares? Nobody cares. And as I remember Noam Chomsky saying, because he's quite a bit older than me, I remember him saying that when the first Intifada broke out in 1987, the reaction inside the United States was, well, what do these people have to be upset about at all? That they had no real understanding that the occupation was 20 years old at that point, and that they knew that they would never be free and they would never have independence, and that they were getting completely screwed. They weren't even going to be able to get their measly stinking 22% of historic Palestine. And so that's what they were writing over. But that the way Chomsky put it was, this is absolutely a mystery to the Americans of what is even the problem, because they never explain it.
No. And when they do, they lie. It's all lies and propaganda. We're all told that, Israel is our ally. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. They're the most moral army on the planet. All of those things that they're telling us now. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
And we never get told to like look at it from the perspective of a 19-year-old Palestinian male who's been raised in this environment where they've literally since birth have been treated like criminals and thugs and less than, and then expect to have them treat anybody with respect, with dignity,
right?
with authority. I mean, the only thing that they know is fear and violence, and this is how, you know.
Well, that's what is so frustrating for me, especially as a parent. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at what's taking place and the way that they have been brutalizing the people of Palestine for decades, and the way that these kids have grown up in this environment. And in these situations, I always imagine what that would be like to live in that situation. And when I think about that, and then I think about the way that they target these kids and they have snipers taking out their limbs. And I mean, you're goddamn right, I would join Hamas. You know what I mean? Like, somebody's going to clip that and call me a terrorist. I don't give a fuck. That is exactly what I would do. I think any human being with an ounce of humanity would do the same. You're going to fight against something like that. You're going to fight against that type of occupation and brutalization. Anybody would. And the idea that it is seen or treated as if it is this unreasonable reaction, and that how dare they just need to be grateful for what they've been given. I mean, it is insane. And just to go back to your point about the Nazi mentality and the way that they're literally almost word for word quoting Adolf Hitler, that is so fascinating to me, watching this take place and watching the way the Zionist Jews have allowed themselves to become what was done to them is psychologically, to me, fascinating. I don't know how that happens, how you are able to, obviously the people who are alive today, most of them didn't experience the Holocaust, but clearly they are from that bloodline. And to have that happen to you and your family, and then to do the same thing to others is just, I don't know how you allow yourself to get to that point, but that's exactly what we're watching play out. And it is unbelievably terrifying to examine that. I mean, we're looking at go ahead.
It's real simple, right? I mean, I've heard Zionist Jews before in the face of criticism against Palestine, just immediately with a phrase, just say, well, what about what the Germans did to us? And then the whole point is, well, that was wrong. So you should not do that. But that's not the way they take it. It's just a license. Wow. You know, it just means that they can do whatever they want. And it's
it's an entitlement that, and it's because now the other thing is the 3,000-year-old argument to me is just the most insane thing ever, because everybody's ancestors lived somewhere else 3,000 years ago, and you can't go back and claim that as your own now immediate homeland today, kicking people off of it and acting like they weren't there in the first place, and then nobody's going to be mad about that. I mean,
none of this would stand as universal law, right? It's only this one case that it gets to be like this. And by the way, I don't remember specifically what it was anymore. I guess it was on Twitter back before I quit it, where it was just one particular strike in Gaza where these children were killed or something. And one of the Palestinians was saying, look, man, you have to understand, this is what they've been doing to us for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
They kill us like this, not just, reenacting their own trauma of the Holocaust or whatever. It's been like this since the foundation of Zionism. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, they want this land for themselves, not as like just to be immigrants and coexist with the people who already live there. They're going to make a Jewish state at the expense of the people who already live there. They had to drive them out of there. And the decision was made. We're going to kill their little girls, and we're going to kill their little boys, and we're going to bomb them, and we're going to torture them, and we're going to humiliate them and degrade them. And we're going to do everything we can. We're going to treat them as cruelly as we possibly can, just to force them the hell out of our way so we can steal their land. This is as simple as that. And so this is how it's been for 100 years. And from the point of view of the Palestinians, why are you doing this to me? What the hell did I do? And then the answer is, well, you're not with our group and you're in our way. And we want to steal your stuff. And so that's it. And they just throw bombs right at somebody's kid. And, Americans, what we know of war is like John Wayne fighting against the Japanese or some kind of thing, who like had an army. You might remember in World War II, the Japanese But and so we just think, well, that's what war is when you wear olive green and you fight people wearing gray out in a field somewhere, and everybody deserves it, or everybody's at least a combatant. And then and just because TV won't show it, this is changing now because of social media, of course. But for the most part, people just presume that that's what's going on over there. The Israelis are fighting a force equal enough, or at least evil enough, to justify what they're doing, but it's just not that, right?
No. Yeah, this is a totally lopsided. You can't even call it a fight. I mean, it is one of the most technologically advanced armies on planet Earth, with some dudes in flip-flops with homemade bombs. You know what I mean? Like it is not even comparable. And that is I think that, you know, talking about social media and the way that has played a role in this. I've been talking about this since jump, because I feel like that's been a huge turning point this time around, because prior to this, I think Israel had full control over the narrative. They told American newspapers and American TV stations what to write, print, say, all of that stuff, and they controlled the narrative. And now they don't have the ability to do that, because people are able to cover this on the ground in real time. And I think that has really been a game changer. And we've seen the way that I mean, I don't know that it's going to be enough to save Palestine, but I think that we've seen the way that this shift has taken place, where generally prior to October 7th, it was pretty much just blanket support for Israel. Nobody really questioned it. And now I think there's been a massive shift. And I think there is so much more Palestinian support than we have ever seen previously. And again, I don't know that that's going to be enough to save Palestine. I hope it is. I kind of doubt it. It doesn't look great. But I think that has definitely been, I mean, just if you look at the most recent news story, the unbelievably horrific rape that's taking place in the so-called prisons, really concentration camps. It is, and listen, I want to make very clear to people that this rape stuff, this is not new. This is not like a just since October 7th thing. Rape has been systematically used against the people of Palestine as a weapon for decades. So this is not new. But the most recent example is so horrific. Reading about his injuries. I mean, I'm not going to play the video. It's on social media if you want to go check it out. It's not very graphic. They hide themselves with shields because they're fucking cowards. But I mean, I don't even want to list it. We're on YouTube, right? I don't want to even list the injuries. You can go read it for yourself. It's bad. Horrifying.
It's real bad. It's about as bad as it gets.
It's about as bad as it gets. I can't believe he's still alive. And it reminded me of, honestly, of Khalid al-Masri, who was the guy who was wrongfully essentially kidnapped by the CIA, mistaken identity, thrown into a black site. WikiLeaks ended up providing him with the information he needed to get some justice there. But he was horrifically raped as well. And it reminded me of that story. And it's just...
I remember... Misty, at Abu Ghraib prison, it was Israelis that were coming training the Americans how to torture the people. They had what was called the Palestinian chair, which is not named after something the Palestinians invented for use against Israelis. Right. What's the Palestinian chair? It's a special chair the Israelis invented to torture Palestinians with, to break their back, right? Or at least get them to the very edge of their back breaking before it breaks. And so, yeah, it is where that comes from. And by the way, and I just can't get over this because it's just too perfect. It's too horrible. It's like they say you can't make this shit up, but you can. But then you could have, if you were really being mean, you could have made it up. And then there they are in the footage as they're gang raping the guy. They got a German Shepherd there barking at the guy, threatening to bite his face off, I guess, or whatever, as they're raping him. And this is going to get our towers knocked down again more. This is what caused September 11th. You know, those Al-Qaeda guys, it wasn't just Afghanistan, and they were Bill Clinton's guys fighting in Bosnia and fighting in Chechnya all through the 1990s, mostly run by the Saudis, but with some help by America and Britain all through that time. And yet at that same time, they had turned on us. They were attacking us. They tried to kill the World Trade Center back in 1993. And then they attacked some Americans in Yemen in 92, in Saudi in 95 and 96, the Africa embassy bombings in 98, the coal in 2000. And finally, they knocked our goddamn towers down. And who was it? It was Egyptian Islamic Jihad and the Azam group that joined together to become Al-Qaeda. They were Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton's guys. And they did what they did because, and I know people think because Dick Cheney put him up to it or whatever, but that wasn't it. It was because Shimon Peres and his general, Naftali Bennett, bombed a UN shelter full of 106 women and children in Qana, Lebanon in 1996 during Operation Grapes of Wrath. And Mohammed Atta and his buddy Ramzi bin al-Shibh had already decided they were going to join al-Qaeda as soon as that operation began. And then it was just a couple of months later that bin Laden put out his first declaration of war. And at the very beginning of it, he goes on for a bit about Qana and about the Israelis. And he says, we'll never forget the images of these children with their heads and their arms and legs severed. And we're going to get you. And that's what it said. And that was when Ramzi bin al-Shibh and Mohammed Atta decided we're going to Afghanistan and we're joining up with these guys. And then, of course, when they got there, bin Laden and them said, oh, you guys have Western passports? Because they were Egyptians studying in Germany. You guys have Western passports? We got a job for you. And they were engineering students, so they were up to the task. And so now a terrorist attack doesn't have to be as successful as that, as horrible as September 11th was. But I don't know about you, Misty, but I can tell you that any boy or man listening to this show can tell you of 1,001 soft targets and how they could be hit in this country, right? Crash a 18-wheeler full of gasoline off the overpass onto the 405 at rush hour or whatever. There's a million of them, okay? There's a million of them.
Run a tugboat into a bridge pylon. Oh, wait, they already did that. Wait, sorry.
or waltz right into a nuclear power plant with a couple of guns and kill people and set everything on overload or God knows what. It'd be very easy. The way to protect America from terrorism is to stop supporting Israel raping people to death. That is what the deal is. That is how to provide security. There's a reason that James Baker III wanted a two-state solution, and it ain't because he's so in love with Muslim Arabs, right? It was because that was what is in the interest of the United States of America. And it's the same reason that Colin Powell, after September 11th, the Secretary of State, said to George Bush, we got to do this two-state solution. You have all the political capital in the world now. You got to make him do it. But he's up against Ariel Sharon, and Ariel Sharon beat his ass back down. And he had to back down. He was going to be a one-term president, and he knew it. And so he had to back down. But there's a reason that James Baker and Colin Powell, Republican secretaries of state, wanted a two-state solution. It wasn't sympathy for the Palestinians and their plight.
It was the Carlyle Group. They wanted to make money afterwards.
Yeah, right? They were just trying to protect.
It's common sense. It's common fucking sense. I mean, this is not, listen, I'm just some chick in Ohio, and I recognize that that's how you keep us safe. You know what I mean? Like, you cannot, we are the largest purveyor of terrorism across the globe. It's not even close. Like, it's not even close. We are the absolute worst when it comes to that. And the idea that, we're going to fight terrorism by being terrorists is really dumb. And that's the approach that we've taken so far. It's not working out great for us.
And don't forget the natural gas and the oil deposits that are sitting underneath Gaza, worth $500 billion. That Dick Cheney, they've been talking about this for 25 years, and now they see that they have the ability to get it. There were some gas contracts that were expiring at the end of 2024 for Great Britain, so there was an accelerated reason to potentially go after that. Reef and Colin covered that on INN News about 6 months ago. They talked about the Gaza gas fields, and they're leveling the whole thing. And then we looked at that Ynet article a couple of weeks ago about how they're looking to rebuild it and make it kind of like a port, almost a port city, almost like Dubai, that's international and run by a consortium of people, but still controlled by Israel. Like, how is that going to work? I don't know. Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Well, I mean, that's why I got this guy here.
If they
move all the Palestinians out, then they can do it, right? That was what Jared Kushner was talking about. We're going to build condos here. If they're going to build a Dubai there, they're going to build it for Israeli Jews, not for the Palestinians.
They want the Ben Gurion Canal. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different reasons that they want to take Palestine. I mean, this is, and it's not just Palestine. I think people need to be mindful of that. It's the greater Israel. I mean, this
Lebanon,
is something that they've been
Syria,
talking about.
yep.
Yeah, this is something that they've been talking about for a very long time. So and it's so funny to me because we've always heard that, oh, we have to stop Russia or they're going to take over Europe. And really, again, that's just pure projection because that's kind of what Israel wants to do. You know what I mean? If you don't stop Israel, they're going to take over the Middle East. And that's been the plan for some time now. So
there's actually an amusing clip that I saw, and I guess somebody put it on Twitter last year. That was Harry Truman with a map explaining to the American people, well, the Zionists, they wanted all this land here and they wanted to go all the way to the Litani River here in Lebanon and they wanted to go all the way to Baghdad and whatever. And he goes, well, I had to rein them in a little bit. We just gave them this instead of that and whatever. But
you're going to make 6 million people pretty upset if you try to move them in and replace them with 6 million more. I remember that exact speech that you're talking about.
There you go. So,
yeah.
But look, so, I don't know what's going to happen. The media hype behind Harris is huge, and apparently people are buying it. It's amazing to see how easy to manipulate people are. I mean, here's a woman who I can see her
0 votes, Scott.
Well,
0
elected for anything.
Democracy.
Look, I mean, whatever. I've had a lot of jobs in my life, and I could just see her being the manager of a grocery store, and not even because she's really good at that, but just because she's ambitious enough to like get the manager of the store spot. She'd probably be perfect for that, to run an Albertsons or something like that. Yeah. To make it the president of the United States of America? You gotta be kidding. And like, I might be a little bit sexist, but I'm not racist. And I do think that there are women who could be great at lots of things and whatever. That's not what it is. It's just this particular lady is really dumb. She's just amazing. But I have to say, and look, she's up against the most famous guy who ever lived. And so I have to say, although unless Biden resigns and lets her be president for a couple of months first, that could really change things. But if it's just like this, all other things being equal, I have to think that Trump is going to win it. And then that being the case, again, I'm very worried for the poor Palestinians. Because I think if Netanyahu told Trump, look, man, I'll give you $6 if you just let me carpet bomb the West Bank and force everybody out of there. We'll just take care of this one final solution once and for all, force everybody to Jordan or into the Sinai, and we're just going to take it all, and then we'll have Israel. This is what Sheldon Adelson would have wanted, and it'll be fine. I think Trump might just tell him, fine, go ahead.
Yeah.
If you can
name it Trump something, and I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. You know, name a neighborhood in East Jerusalem after Mate, right? And I'm happy. And so, if they can cleanse 2 million Gazans, they can cleanse 3 million West Bankians. Why not? All they got to do, I mean, really, what are they going to do? They start carpet bombing Ramallah, people flee. That's what people do when you start carpet bombing them. And so, how long would it really take the IDF Corps of Engineers to slap together a railroad and a small bridge over the Jordan River? And what compunction would prevent it? I don't think that Donald Trump would stop it. And I don't know that I doubt the Europeans will really do anything. Did you guys see the quote from Smotrich, the finance minister, very powerful?
The 2 million?
Yeah, he said,
I wanted to bring that actually.
Yeah, he said, we could, do you have the clip? Or?
That's on my list. I do have the, hold on, let me pull it up.
There was an article and I saw he had said it. Like basically we do it, but they're not going to let us. I mean, like the rest of the world's not going to let us. Right. Oh my God.
That was the point. He just says, look, we would and we could just starve all the Palestinians out of there until they give us our hostage back. And it'd be perfectly fine to do that. But as he just put it, the world won't let us do it.
Is that the right one?
That's the right one.
Is this the right one? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Can you hear it?
Well, I just had it.
למרות שזה אולי צודק ומוסרי עד שלא מחזירים את החטופים שלנו, הומניטרי תמורת הומניטרי, נכון מוסרית, אין מה לעשות חיים היום בתוך...
It's morally right.
צריך לגיטימציה בינלאומית למלחמה הזאת.
This guy's a fucking psychopath.
Oh, the worst.
I mean, he is straight up a psychopath. Like and this is not, again, just to be clear, this is not new for him. Prior to October 7th, he said very similar things. So this is not a new, people like to pretend, oh, they're just responding to October 7th. No. This has been the rhetoric for a very long time, and the policy in Israel for a very long time.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. So
it's moral. I mean, Scott, they're going on Israeli media and not only like justifying, defending, saying that it should be okay for them to rape these prisoners, like just out loud.
This was
in the Knesset,
on the floor of their parliament.
Yes.
Of the Knesset. That's right.
Yes, this should absolutely be allowed.
Yeah. That's what we're dealing with. I mean, it is.
You know what it reminds me of? When I was in high school, I had this really great science teacher, and he was saying, listen, when all the Baptists say that the Bible outlaws gay sex, you got to read it carefully. It's Leviticus, and I know nothing about the Bible. I just remember what my science teacher told me. It says in Leviticus about that, and what it's talking about is it's saying that your army should not rape defeated men in battle. That's what it's about. Is exactly what that's what the Bible forbids, is what the IDF is doing right now, is raping their victims, that their enemies that they defeat in war. And it had nothing to do with like who you love or any of that. It was like how you carry out, it was like Geneva Convention.
Prisoners of war. Yeah.
Rules for.
And people need to also be mindful of the fact that the lies of October 7th, all of the allegations of sexual assault, rampant sexual assault that took place on October 7th, which there's still really no evidence for.
And baby-headed babies that didn't exist.
They told those lies in order to create justification and to manipulate people into being okay with what they were already doing and wanted to continue to do. That's what atrocity propaganda is. That's the whole point of it.
Worse than that, right, is that they had this thing, and this sounds crazy, but whatever, man, it's all in the Israeli press. You read all about it. They have a doctrine that they invented for their a soldier, or in the aftermath of the kidnapping of a soldier named Gilad Shalit, I think it was. Who Hamas held him for years, and they ended up having to trade like 1,000 guys for him. And so they invented this doctrine that called the Hannibal Doctrine,
Hannibal Directive
that said that if a soldier is being kidnapped and taken back to Gaza, it's better to blow him away than to let him put them in that position, having to negotiate over him. But the thing with that is that, first of all, that's absolutely insane and horrible. But secondly, at least you're talking about combatants, conscripts as they are, but like sort of some kind of loophole rationalization. I don't know. And even then it was on like a one-off basis. But then now what they do, on the morning of, when it's not just a soldier or two soldiers, but many soldiers and many civilians, hundreds of civilians are being kidnapped and taken back into Gaza on the fly. And we don't know for sure whether it was Netanyahu himself or someone below him. Presumably they would have needed the prime minister's authority to call for, and as far as I understand, this was like ad-libbed on the spot, that they didn't have a previous plan for this. They made it up. Mass Hannibal, meaning kill any hostages being taken back in, even if it's some old lady, even if it's a little girl. Blow them all away. Because
the general confirmed that too.
Yeah. And so this is why you had, in some case, and apparently it's, I don't know, less than 100, or I don't know exactly what it is. It's not going to be too many of the dead, but it's like something like 100 of them, or approaching 100 of the Israelis who were killed by their own forces. And that means helicopter, rocket fire, and it means tank fire. And in both cases, that means horribly maimed and burned bodies. So now, instead of saying, well, yeah, of course we did that, they blamed all of those deaths on Hamas. And then they said, oh my God, look what Hamas did, the way that they horribly maimed and butchered and deformed these dead bodies and set them on fire and all these things, when it was a tank round that had done that, or it was a Hellfire missile that had done that. And so, they ended up smearing and they did slaughter civilians that day. They are terrorists anyway, but they ended up just turning the thing into, Belgian babies on bayonets. They turned it into Saddam's weapons of mass destruction. This whole giant thing. Remember how they did Assad? They said that Assad declared war on his own country. His goal was to kill every last civilian in it. And luckily, Al-Qaeda was there to lead the plucky resistance to try to save the people of the country from the dictator. Like, what a bunch of crap.
And that he used chemical weapons on his own people, which actually leads me into the last thing I kind of want to talk about, which was the crackdown on free speech and the amount of censorship, which is what, Misty, I know is near and dear to all of our hearts. We certainly are thrilled that
Elon saved free speech, Andy. Elon saved free speech.
Julian's out. But listen, in the last month, you've had Ali Abu Nima threatened to be arrested in Germany. You've got CJ Hopkins basically brought into terrorism court on an appeal that he beat. It's unbelievable, for putting a picture of a swastika on a COVID mask so faintly. It's beyond. It's just because he questioned their narrative. What's happening here in the United States, even today, you saw that they're going after Scott Ritter. I don't know what happened there. We're waiting to find out. But then look, the most
that guy's a sick creep. I'm sure they successfully entrapped him into lewd behavior.
I think he claimed it was a FARA thing.
Would that be the 5th time they successfully entrapped him with sex crime?
Yeah, well, I think he's claiming it's a foreign agent thing.
It has to do with why they pulled him off the plane, I think, a couple of months ago. But what I really want to mention is Israel.
No favors associating with that sick creep.
Yeah, well, Israel doing the most propagandized stuff in there, but I call it shut it down. Look what they're doing with Twitter, taking away likes and retweets and being able to see the volume of that. I definitely believe that Netanyahu's behind that, because the IDF has been getting ratioed to shit for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. All right. And the TikTok stuff too. They're behind, again, shut it down because of what happened on college campuses. They're behind, shut it down because of what's going on in the United States and all of the backlash against seeing their atrocity, seeing their war and their massacres live streamed every morning. Look, every morning I wake up and say, is today going to be the day I don't see a dead kid from Palestine in my feed? Nope, not today.
Not today.
Not today. And it's been every day for like 9 months. And it's like, who's going to make, this is what I want to know. Who's going to make this stop so that we don't have to see this, and it doesn't have to be done in our name, with our weaponry, with our money that we gave them to do this, and then not expect any backlash? I mean, like you said, we're asking for it. We're setting ourselves up. Why? So that our weapons industry and the military industrial complex will end up very successful and continuing to be wealthy for many, many decades to come. If we even have a planet left or a country left or in anything, And then there's the ICJ. How do where does the ICJ fit in, Scott?
Well, I mean, they don't really have any power authority. I mean, if anything, they can do a decent job of documenting quotable things to quote later or whatever, to demonstrate at least the double standard there. But this is why. Well, I'm just paranoid about this anyway. I'm really worried about this, but I think that this is the message that the American people need to hear the most too. Is that, as they know, but they didn't really all the way think it through ever since then and whatever. But that George W. Bush was lying. It never was freedom that they hated. What it was Israel. America supports Israel killing babies in Palestine and Lebanon. It was that plus the stationing of troops on the Holy Arabian Peninsula in order to bomb and blockade Iraq all through the 1990s at the cost of hundreds of thousands of excess deaths during that time. And of course, the no-fly zone bombings and the rest of that. Those were, and just American support for the dictatorships in Saudi and Egypt and around the region as well. This is what caused, again, Ronald Reagan and I guess somewhat George Bush, but especially Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton's terrorists to turn against the United States. And Bill Clinton kept backing them anyway, even though they started attacking us 1 month and 1 day into his presidency at the World Trade Center. He kept, a month and a week, I mean to say. But he kept backing them anyway through his whole presidency. But they haven't gone away. As you guys know, George Bush incidentally created hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands more of them with Iraq War II. And Obama created tens of thousands more with his dirty war in Syria that blew up into the caliphate and then Iraq War III. And so these guys mostly have parochial concerns, right? They mostly want to kill Assad, or they want to kill the king of Jordan or the El Presidente of Egypt or whatever. But some of them, I'm sure, still adhere to the Zawahiri doctrine of the far enemy. And look what happened when they tried to create their own caliphate before they got rid of America. Obama and Trump bombed it right back off the face of the earth again, even after Obama built it for them, which was pretty nice of him to do for them. But then they bombed it right back off the face of the earth again, only proving Zawahiri right, that if they want to have their way, the bin Ladenites, they got to get rid of us first. And the way to do that is to bankrupt us. And the way to do that is to attack us and kill our civilians, provoke us into worse wars on the credit card until the dollar breaks, the empire falls apart, and the American people and the American government have no choice but to bring the empire home. That was the far enemy doctrine. Honestly, all the inside job theories, that's the inside job that completely obscures the motive and the strategy behind the killers. And we are in danger of that happening again. It would take nothing for a few guys to take over another airplane. It would take nothing for a few guys. It wouldn't have to be an airliner. You could pack a bunch of explosives in a private jet to take automatic rifles or even semi-automatic rifles to crowds at ball games or even on this side of the security line at the airport or anything. And we're essentially wide open for that. We're protected because of our oceans and the competence of the Customs Service. Otherwise, we are in real danger. And I know that there's a lot of right-wing hyperbole about this. I'm not talking about that, but there is a real danger of anti-American terrorists coming across the Mexican border. And the former FBI agent Ali Soufan, who's not perfect, but I take him seriously. He could have stopped 9/11 if they let him do his damn job. That guy put out a thing recently warning there were like 8 Tajiks that were arrested who had snuck across the Mexican border and were arrested all across the country. And he says he was imitating the CIA from 01. He says ISIS-K determined to strike inside U.S.
ISIS-K? You mean CIA? ISIS-K?
Well, no, dude, no. ISIS-K was a project of the CIA, kind of, sort of. They were Pakistani Taliban who had, when Obama was helping the Pakistanis bomb the Swat Valley and the federally administered tribal territories, they sought safe haven inside Afghanistan. And so the NDS, under the CIA tutelage, helped. And we don't really know this part. That part can be inferred because the CIA did control the NDS. But the good reporting on this doesn't really mention the CIA. They say that the NDS controlled them and used them to, 1, try to fight against the Taliban in Afghanistan, and 2, to do terrorist attacks inside Pakistan, to pay them back for backing the Afghan Taliban on the Pakistani side of the border. But then what happened was, in 2013, they raised the black flag and declared their loyalty to Baghdadi in Syria and to the Islamic State.
ISIS, right.
And they went and they started slitting throats. They went nuts and started killing everybody. And it was at that point that America allied with the Taliban against them. You could read in the Washington Post where you got the Delta Force flying drones as the Taliban's Air Force fighting ISIS-K. And it was not the Taliban, it was ISIS that did the suicide bombing at the airport on the way out of there. And it's a real group. And if you know some I don't know, let me know. But I don't know of any reason whatsoever to believe that they're under the control of the Central Intelligence Agency right now at all. I mean, these guys have their own agency, as the color-coded revolutionaries like to say. And the CIA, they specialize in creating these monsters, but not necessarily controlling them.
Yes.
It was how Western media actually went and blamed them or immediately said that they were taking credit for the Moscow theater bombing, and it was really weird.
No, I don't think so. No, it's just like they knew that it was Al Qaeda that attacked us on 9/11 immediately, because they knew that they were going to attack us any day. They knew all summer long there's an attack coming. And so they went and everybody just did the math. Well, it wasn't Hezbollah, right? It wasn't Vladimir Putin. Who else would do it? It's Osama bin Laden's guys. And
it could have been Ukrainians. I mean, certainly Ukrainians could have sent drones and stuff in there. I thought that it was just, I don't know, just seemed it was a...
drones is one thing, but we're talking about Tajik fighters with machine guns on the street of Moscow. And by the way, and you may know about this, there's been plenty of really great reporting, including in The Intercept and in the New York Times, about ISIS fighters from Syria who then went on to Ukraine to join the jihad, fighting alongside the neo-Nazis and their friends in the Azov battalion against the Russians, as long as they have a chance to kill Russians. And in all the reporting about that, I don't know of any reason to think that, it's the CIA is funneling them there or whatever. They don't need that help. They just traveled through Turkey, didn't get there. It's right there. Which is why Russia was so concerned about Obama building the caliphate in Syria in the first place, is we're safe way the hell over here, mostly safe way the hell over here, compared to Russia is a hop, skip, and a jump away from these goons. And so I think, and also, there were warnings. This was in the Washington Times, had quite a bit of coverage of this, where the Americans were telling the Russians, hey, there's going to be an ISIS-K attack. You better look out. We know something you don't know. And in fact, the New York Times even bragged, admitted that they didn't tell them everything they knew. They only just told them, hey, heads up, something's going to happen. But they knew more than that, and they could have told them more than that. They admitted that. Maybe, I think, even boasted about that, just because they hate the Russians so much. They think that sounds good to admit. But I think that, and look, it's true that if you have some goons on the ground with guns, that it's hard to tell exactly who put them there, because they could have been hired by this guy who was actually hired by this guy who was actually hired by this guy and stuff like that. Covert action does exist. And it's hard to say for certain. It could have been the Ukrainians who sent them there. I know that was the Russian accusation, but I think
somebody hired anonymously through a Telegram group was I believe the way it was, and they got paid in crypto, so there was literally zero connection. Nobody even knew who they were working for, allegedly. Again, it's alleged.
These guys have been killing Russians for a very long time. They've been at war with Russia for a very long time, and not only, with American help, and certainly not because of American help. Right. I mean, they've been fighting them since the days of the Soviet Union. And then the Chechen War really started in 1994, just a couple of years after that. And so to them, the Russians in Chechnya is the same thing as the Americans in Saudi Arabia, as far as they're concerned. But then what do? Ruthless terrorist attacks against women and children. They slaughter civilians and then bring on their own demise. And so, but I have cause to worry, and I think this is the number one main reason why Americans ought to understand why we should not be backing Israel. And what they're doing is wrong, but apparently you don't care about that. But how about what they're doing is so wrong that it's going to motivate people into doing wrong against us, and we get nothing out of it. And we should be knocking this off right now.
And as the guy who founded, who was a co-founder, Antiwar.com, the managing editor, what do we do? How do we get our military budget reduced? How do we start to knock down the $900 billion that keeps going up every year, regardless? They keep inventing new wars so that it keeps going up. We've got to get that down, because that's money that we can be spending here. That's a lot of money. Plus, we threw another $200 billion to Ukraine and everywhere else, and we're just throwing it around. It's like, guys, we need that here a little bit. Here, no. Well,
and look, okay, I mean, the short answer is it's not going to stop until the dollar breaks. I mean, the national debt's at 35 trillion now, and it'll be 50 trillion by the end of the decade. And at some point, people are just going to lose confidence in the American currency, and we're going to have a real crack up boom crisis and hyperinflation and the absolute end of the empire and maybe of the union. And it'll be a absolute catastrophe. The solution to that, to prevent that, would be to get it through people's head. America first is right. And America first, people maybe on the left don't understand this. They should understand. And I'm not talking about what Donald Trump means. I'm talking about the real phrase where that comes from is defend America first. It doesn't mean be a selfish jerk like, Ayn Rand just says be mean to everyone and take what you can or whatever. That's not what it means, America first. It means leave the world the hell alone. It means national government's responsibility is protecting the life and liberty of the American people. And when they do not succeed in doing that by controlling this world empire and attempting to exert dominance over all of Eurasia, our government sucks at it, and we can't afford it. And we have to call it off. We should call it off sooner than later. There's just no need to dominate Europe. Every country in Europe is our ally. And like what? Germany's going to go out of control and create a Reich and go to war with everyone again for no good reason at all. Not without a Hitler, without a Versailles Treaty to rise back up from, or any of this. I mean, that's not a danger, right? Virtually every country in Europe, and including China, are friends of ours. China might be a competitor in a way, but we've been friends with them for 50 years. Nixon went over there 50 years ago. The red flag didn't come down, but the Cold War ended back before I was born. And so there's just no need to attempt to do things this way. Even Zbigniew Brzezinski, before he died, wrote that, man, we need to retrench. We need to make a new modus vivendi with Russia and China and India and the other middle rank powers, and outsource more of the global law enforcing to them, and start husbanding our resources and taking better care of what we expend ourselves on. And of course, he had famously opposed Iraq War II, and made himself a real enemy of the neocons for that. But, and Henry Kissinger too was saying, geez, we're being kind of reckless, so we shouldn't be going this far. We shouldn't be pushing our luck this hard. Well, when Rockefeller's two worst guys are telling you that it's time to back down now, then it's okay to back down now.
You might want to listen to them. Like the worst people on the planet are saying, hey guys, I think you're going a little far. Maybe we should.
Absolutely right. So that's it. And look, our Constitution describes a state of peace. War is an emergency, an exception. And we cannot have a limited republic and a free society, and a free economy with a global empire. So that's it. You have to choose. And,
and what's it, 16 years? 16 years of our existence, we have not been at war for our country, at least for the last century and change.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's bad. And I think, Scott, you're absolutely right. And I think that that's what's so frustrating about this, is because it's the propaganda game is so incredibly effective, and people have no idea what's actually happening in the world. And so getting this message across is, that's beyond a mountain to climb. You've been doing it for years, and you know how hard it is. I think I've asked you this before. How the hell are we supposed to do this? And you're like, you just have to keep saying it. You just have to keep putting the work in and talking to people and trying to get the facts to them. And that's really all that we can do. But I think it's, you're right. I think that we are an empire in decline. And frankly, I am kind of a cynic. I'm a cynic. And so I feel like we're probably past the point of no return. I would like to think that we're not, but I really feel like we're past the point of no return. And so if you live in the United States of America, I cannot recommend enough trying to prepare yourself for the fall of empire, because it's coming and it's not going to be pretty. Listen, we have historical reference for what the fall of empire looks like. It's happened before. We have never seen an empire this large and this heavily armed. And we are a wounded animal currently backed into a corner, and we are going to lash out irrationally. We already are. And that's going to look really bad for a lot of people. So I don't mean to be like Debbie Downer, but
the British and the Romans, maybe.
Yeah.
The Soviet Union was an absolute wreck. Communism doesn't work. And the government literally owned all industry there. And they tried to figure out prices essentially by guessing. A bunch of nerds on a central committee trying to figure out what things were worth and how they should be distributed. So when that system fell apart, they did have some industries, and there was a lot of mismanagement about how those industries were handled, and a lot of them fell apart. But even still, they were essentially being reduced down to year zero, right? If the American empire falls, if we have capitalist leadership in charge, then we'll be fine, because we already have $1 bazillion worth of real wealth in this country in the form of our infrastructure, all the factories, the roads, the trucks, the machine tools, our universities full of engineering professors, and all of these things that the Soviet Union had never had anything like that. No other empire had anything like that when they fall. So in other words, you could take the entire defense industry and fire everybody. As long as you cut a bunch of taxes and cut a bunch of regulations and have open entry into the economy, they'll be fine. All those jobless defense industry people will all go get productive jobs and create new wealth, and the country be fine. We face, if I dream a genie, just blink the entire military industrial complex away and say, get a job. Then everything would be fine. We'd have a recession.
We'll own nothing and be happy.
For half the
right?
year, whatever.
Yeah.
As long as, and as you know, if you've ever traveled around this country, you know that every town you go to, there's a neighborhood of mansions. Every town in America. There are 1 million millionaires. Now, that's not just money. That's productivity. That's real wealth being created by real people working hard. That's what the country, the national government is supposed to be protecting. And so
a lot of that's also exploitation, man. A lot of those 16 million millionaires are off of exploitation. Look, behind every great fortune is a great crime. I hate to say it, and I think we hear that a lot. Look, we're running out, but
fortune. $1 million ain't a great fortune. $1 million.
No, not anymore, sadly. Because
look, let me tell you something. Fine, you can go move to Russia and starve, but I'm just saying that in the United States, if our government was not run by a bunch of statists who had no understanding of economics whatsoever, if they could be brought to understand that we could just do without all this and it'd be fine, then they could just let it go. As you say, wounded animal backed in a corner, when they're going to lose all their power, but they're going to lose all their power to what? To export to Europe? No. The Europeans aren't going to ban our imports, are they? No. None of that. We give up our empire. All we do is save money and save wealth. We stop taking all of these material resources and time and investment in mental power and
murdering babies overseas. Yeah.
Instead of turning that all into weapons and blowing up private property with it and then throwing it in the garbage, all that goes to the productive economy, creating goods and services for people, improving their standard of living. And so, in other words, we don't need the empire and we don't have to fear letting it go. It'll be just fine. And just like with look what Donald Trump's facing right now. Let's say Donald Trump wins the election. He comes in. Now he, and then especially Biden, created so much money. We have this horrible inflationary crisis. Now, what we could do is force a recession. I don't know, raise taxes through the roof, demand the Fed raise interest rates through the roof and force a terrible recession to beat inflation. Or he could just cut a bunch of regulations and allow productivity to rise up to the level of all the new paper money that they created.
Why are the regulations in place, though? Because they're there to protect people for the most part. They're not just there to hinder business from doing business.
Man, you're the guy who just told me how corrupt the system is. All those regulations are there to protect big business from the free economy. All left-wingers should just stop it and be libertarians now. You're just wrong about this.
Wow.
The entire regulatory state is built to protect exactly the big business you hate and fear so much. You think
they're the ones that are funding. They're the ones that are funding the politicians that make the laws. What are you talking about, Scott? They're the ones that are funding the politicians that make those laws.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly right. The regulatory state is there because progressivism is a right-wing plot. And
wait. So corporations put. It's not the progressivism but the lefties. It's the corporations and the right wingers and the capitalists that are putting the regulations, that are putting the politicians that make the regulations to keep the corporations in place. It has nothing to do with the lefties. That's a Republican conservative thing because they're conserving the wealth for the top 1% and for the capitalists.
The last 100 years or whatever. I mean, give me a break, dude.
No, the Democrats are capitalists too. We don't have communism in this country. We never have even been close to it.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Listen, man, let me set you straight real quick here, okay? The Democrats are fascists. The Republicans are to the right of them. And you are a sucker because you want the government to pass regulations to control business, which just makes you the progressive puppet of the corporate right wing.
I want clean air. I want clean water. I want clean air. I want clean water. This guy's going to disband the EPA.
But can you trust the government?
Who can you look? Who are you going to trust to make sure you got clean water? Because down the street, the chemical because Duke
headache. I don't know
Energy. Okay,
your day. Serious.
Duke Energy is dumping coal ash into a river.
Every other thing you say. Give me a fucking break. You know who's
Duke
the
Energy
fire? The
Guys, this is getting like you're screaming over each other. No points are being made here. You're just screaming over each other. And listen, I get it from both sides. Listen. If COVID showed us anything,
it does. I got you.
If COVID showed us anything, it's that the government cannot be trusted, right? Like, I think that's abundantly clear now. So that's, I think that
regulations and let the market figure it out. That's what it is. Those regulations are there to enslave.
The market is so good at protecting the people over profit. Yep.
Guys, I feel like this is a whole other show.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
It's a whole other show.
This isn't that one. But all right, listen, we got INN news coming up. I really appreciate you coming, and I definitely want to have more of a conversation with you about a lot of this stuff. Because
you guys do that on your own time.
And privatize the air, and we'll be fine.
Anyways, listen, if you guys keep an eye out for Scott's new book coming out, Provoked: How America Started the New Cold War with Russia and the Catastrophe in Ukraine. It is, in my opinion, probably going to be the go-to read on everything Russia-Ukraine. I haven't read it yet, obviously, but just from reading Scott's previous books, it will be certainly worth a read. So keep an eye out. Do you have a release date or any idea when that might be coming out? No? Okay, so they're working on editing, so it'll be coming out soonish. And then also don't forget LibertarianInstitute.org. They're in the middle of their fundraiser right now. Go check them out. And if you would like to make a contribution, Indy, you said INN News is coming up right now.
Yes, INN News at 9:30. Antiwar.com, again, one of the best publications out there. Indie Media Award honoree. I love what Dave DeCamp and the whole team over there does.
Yeah.
Okay. Kyle
also a bunch of libertarians.
Outstanding people. Look, there's a lot that we do get along on. There's a lot that we passionately argue and disagree about. And I really love you and appreciate you for that, really.
Yeah. And you guys should get together and have this conversation if you would like. That would be good.
Yeah. Of course, totally. We go, you can cash app Indie News Network. You go to the co-fee.com/Indie News Network. IndieNews.network for all the links, and I really appreciate Scott being here. I really appreciate Misty hosting this. Again, I want to see Palestine freed. I want to see a resolution to this, and I want to see somehow this get turned around so that, and we have to see the baby stop dying like right now. And I don't know how we do this, but we've got to figure out a way to make it happen and keep yelling until it does. And that's all we can do.
Agreed. Get in the streets, make noise, do whatever you can. Mostly just have these conversations. They're uncomfortable conversations, especially with the level of propaganda and brainwashing that has gone on in this country. But it's important to talk about this stuff openly, honestly, and not be afraid of it. I think a lot of people previous to October 7th were afraid to have these conversations. I think that a lot more people are realizing the importance and the necessity of breaking down that wall and having these conversations. So do it. And go check out INN News 9:30. And you guys know where to find me. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we will hopefully see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Night.